Bel Air, Los Angeles. 668 St. Cloud Road. Not the White House, not the Oval Office. Just a house. And in that house, the man who was once the world's most powerful could no longer find his way to the bathroom. Ronald Wilson Reagan, the Great Communicator. The man who addressed millions. The leader who ended the Cold War. The president who said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." Now he looked at his wife Nancy and asked, "Excuse me, who are you?" Have you ever wondered? How does someone who can run a country become unable to manage his own life? The story I'm about to tell you isn't just about a president. It's about how a man's mind slowly disappeared, how a legend quietly faded, and most importantly, how a family said goodbye to their loved one over 10 years. Wait a minute. Don't miss this detail. June 5th, 2004. Time 1:09 p.m. Ronald Reagan took his last breath. He was 93 years old, but the truth is Reagan had died much earlier, 10 years before, in 1994, when he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Everything after that day was just a body. The mind was gone, memories erased. The president no longer existed. But the real story started much earlier. In 1911, in Illinois, development the man behind the president February 6, 1911. Tampico, Illinois. When Ronald Wilson Reagan was born, no one could have predicted he would one day sit in the White House. His father, Jack Reagan, a shoe salesman and alcoholic. His mother, Nell, a devout and warm woman. Ronnie, as he was called in childhood, and his older brother Neil grew up in poverty. But what they didn't know yet, when little Ronnie was 9 years old, he came home one day. He found his father at the door, drunk, lying on the ground, unable to move. "Dad?" said little Ronald. No answer. That day Ronald learned something: powerlessness, shame, and the desire to escape from these one day. In the 1920s, they moved to Dixon, Illinois. Reagan grew up here. He became a lifeguard. He saved 77 lives. He recorded each one on a log. "Why are you counting?" someone asked. "Because," said young Ronald, "I want someone to remember me." This is exactly where everything changed. In 1932, he graduated from Eureka College. He became a radio announcer, Joe Radio Iowa, sports commentator. He discovered his voice, that voice. Deep, warm, reassuring. When people heard that voice, they relaxed, trusted, believed. In 1937, he went to Hollywood. He signed with Warner Brothers. Actor Ronald Reagan was born. He made 53 films. None were big hits, B-class movies. But Reagan was a star. He was handsome. He was charismatic. What you're seeing now is nothing. In 1940, he married Jane Wyman. They had 2 children, Maureen and Michael, adopted. But the marriage wasn't happy. Jane was building her career. She won an Oscar in 1948. Reagan became president of the Screen Actors Guild. He stepped into politics. They divorced in 1948. Reagan was devastated. He tasted failure for the first time. But then, in 1949, he met Nancy Davis. Nancy Davis, young actress. She was at MGM in 1949, and she had a problem. Her name appeared on communist lists by mistake. She had been confused with another Nancy Davis. She asked for help from Ronald Reagan, president of the Screen Actors Guild. You haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. At their first meeting, Ronald looked at her and knew. I'm going to marry this woman. Nancy knew too. This man is my life. March 4th, 1952, they got married. Little Brown Church, San Fernando Valley. A simple ceremony, only 2 witnesses. But a love began, a love that would last 52 years. Nancy became pregnant. Patty was born in 1952, Ron Jr. in 1958. Reagan was no longer just an actor, father, husband, and increasingly more, politician. But what's really shocking, in 1964, Ronald Reagan gave a speech on television, A Time for Choosing. For Barry Goldwater, America was shocked. Who is this actor? Why does he speak so well? Why is he so convincing? That speech changed everything. In 1966, he was elected governor of California. In 1970, he was re-elected. In 1980, he became the U.S. presidential candidate, and he won. Ronald Wilson Reagan, at 69 years old, became the 40th President of the United States. January 20th, 1981, inauguration ceremony. Ronald Reagan placed his hand on the Bible and took the oath. At that moment, 52 Iranian hostages were released. After 444 days, because they feared Reagan's power, America was entering a new era, the Reagan era. Wait a minute, don't miss this detail. March 30th, 1981, only the 69th day of the presidency. Hilton Hotel, Washington, D.C. Reagan gave a speech. When he came outside, John Hinckley Jr. fired 6 gunshots. One hit Reagan's chest. The bullet stopped 2.5 centimeters from his lung. The Secret Service agent pushed Reagan into the limousine. "To the White House," he shouted. But Reagan was coughing up blood. "No, to the hospital. George Washington University Hospital." Reagan walked in. For the image. For the show of strength. Then he collapsed to his knees. "You won't believe this, but on the operating table," he told the surgeon, "I hope you're all Republicans." The surgeon laughed. "Today, Mr. President, we're all Republicans." Reagan survived. He was 70 years old, but he was never the same. That bullet didn't just wound his body, it wounded his soul, and maybe, just maybe, his brain too. This is exactly where everything changed. Reagan recovered. He returned stronger, more charismatic, more loved. In 1984, he was re-elected. Landslide victory. He won 49 out of 49 states. It's morning again in America. Morning is coming to America again. The economy grew. The Cold War ended. The Berlin Wall fell. In 1987, he stood at the Brandenburg Gate and said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." 2 years later, the wall fell. Ronald Reagan made history. What you're seeing now is nothing. But Nancy was noticing. Small things, forgetfulness, confusion. "Ronnie, you told the same story 3 times this morning," she said one day. Reagan laughed. "Really? I'm sorry, Nancy, I guess I'm getting old." But Nancy was worried. This wasn't just old age. It was something else. January 20th, 1989. Reagan left the White House. George H.W. Bush became president. Ronald and Nancy returned to their home in Bel Air. 668 St. Cloud Road, a beautiful house, with a garden, peaceful, perfect for retirement. Reagan began writing his memoirs. He gave speeches. He played golf. But something was changing. You haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. In 1992, Reagan got lost one day while riding his horse. At his ranch, on his own property. The Secret Service searched for hours. When they found him, Reagan was confused. "Where is this?" he asked. "At your ranch, sir. Thousand Oaks. I was horseback riding, wasn't I?" Reagan said. Then, I forgot where I was going. That day, Nancy was scared. Really scared. She took him to doctors. Tests were done, MRI, blood tests, cognitive assessments, initial diagnosis, age-related memory loss, normal. But Nancy knew. This wasn't normal. But what's really shocking, in 1993, they went to Mayo Clinic. More detailed tests. Neurology specialists, Dr. John Mazziota at the head. "Mr. President, we need to do some tests." Reagan laughed. "I'm not considered healthy anymore, doctor. 82 years old. Yes, sir. But we want to be sure." The test lasted for days. Nancy waited, with anxiety, with fear. The results came. Dr. Mazziota called Nancy. "Mrs. Reagan, I need to tell you something." Nancy's heart stopped. "We're seeing early signs of Alzheimer's disease in your president." The world spun. Nancy held her head. "Are you sure?" "Unfortunately, yes. Still early stage. But it will progress," Nancy cried. For the first time. She cried for a long time. Ronald Reagan's office. Bel Air, November 5th, 1994. Reagan was sitting at his desk, a pen in his hand, a paper in front of him. Nancy was across from him. She was crying. "Ronnie, you don't have to do this. We can keep it secret." Reagan shook his head. "No, Nancy, people need to know. Maybe it will help." "But, Nancy," Reagan said, looking at her, "I've always been honest. I'll be that way now too." "Wait a minute, don't miss this detail." Reagan began to write, with a trembling hand, but determined. "My fellow Americans, I have recently been told that I am one of the millions of Americans who will be afflicted with Alzheimer's disease. At the moment, I feel just fine. Nancy was crying as she read. Reagan continued writing. I now begin the journey that will lead me into the sunset of my life. I know that for America there will always be a bright dawn ahead. The last sentence. I now begin the journey that will lead me into the sunset of my life. Journey into the sunset. Perfect metaphor. Because Reagan loved sunsets, you won't believe this, but the letter was published on November 5th, 1994. America was shocked. The president suffering from Alzheimer's. The most powerful man, now the most vulnerable man. The letter made history. For the first time, a president openly confessed such a disease. And Reagan did something more. He turned Alzheimer's from a shame to be hidden into a reality to be discussed. After the letter, millions of dollars in donations came to Alzheimer's research. Reagan was leading even as a patient. This is exactly where everything changed. After the letter, Reagan slowly withdrew from public view. His last public appearance, February 1995, his own 84th birthday. The press asked questions. Reagan tried to answer, but the words wouldn't come. Nancy intervened. Ronnie is tired. Thank you. From that day on, Reagan never appeared in public again. In years, silence, darkness, forgetting. 1995, 1999. The slow descent in the early years. Reagan was still himself, mostly. He woke up in the mornings, had breakfast with Nancy. He walked in the garden, but his memory was fading. Slowly. What you're seeing now is nothing. Reagan asked Nancy one day, when are we going to the White House? Nancy swallowed. Ronnie, we're no longer in the White House. We retired. Reagan was surprised. Retired? When? 7 years ago, sweetheart. 7 years. Reagan couldn't believe it. That's impossible. I just became president yesterday. Nancy held his hand. No, darling. It was a long time ago, Reagan cried quietly, because at that moment he realized his mind was going. You haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. Reagan no longer always recognized Nancy. Sometimes he did. Nancy, my love. Sometimes he didn't. Excuse me, who are you? Each time Nancy's heart broke, but she smiled. I'm Nancy, Ronnie. Your wife. My wife? Reagan would smile. I'm very lucky, and Nancy would cry, because every day she was losing her beloved a little more. But what's really shocking, Reagan looked in the mirror one day. He saw an old man. Who is this? He asked Nancy, pointing to the mirror. Nancy approached. That's you, sweetheart. Ronald Reagan. Reagan looked in the mirror again. No, that can't be me. I'm a young man. I'm an actor. Nancy held back her tears. Ronnie, I'm making movies, Reagan said. At Warner Brothers, I'll be on set tomorrow. Nancy hugged him. Yes, sweetheart. You'll be on set tomorrow. She was lying, because the truth hurt too much. Wait a minute, don't miss this detail. Reagan could no longer walk. Wheelchair, 24-hour care. Nurses were hired, full-time. Because Nancy couldn't do it alone anymore, Reagan could no longer speak. Only sounds came out. Nancy sat beside him every day, held his hand, talked to him. Ronnie, do you remember me? I'm Nancy, your sweetheart. Reagan looked at her, with empty eyes. No sign of recognition, but sometimes, just sometimes, a spark. A flash. As if to say, yes, I remember you. Those moments were everything for Nancy. New century. But nothing changed for Reagan. He lay in bed. He slept most of the time. Sometimes when he woke up, he looked around. Nothing was familiar. No face, no place. Alzheimer's had taken everything. His memory, his personality, his mind. Only a body remained of Reagan. You won't believe this, but Nancy was by his side every day. 10 years. Every day. She held his hand. She sang songs. She showed old photographs. Look, Ronnie, this is us, our wedding day. 1952, do you remember? Reagan didn't even look. This is your first inauguration. 1981, you became president. Do you remember? No reaction, but Nancy continued, because she hoped. Maybe one day he would remember. Maybe a miracle would happen. It didn't. What you're seeing now is nothing. Reagan's 90th birthday. February 6, his children came. Maureen, Michael, Patty, Ron Jr. They all gathered around their father. Happy birthday, Dad, they said. Reagan looked at them, didn't recognize them. Any of them, Maureen cried. Dad, it's Maureen, your daughter. Reagan looked silently. Into space, the birthday cake was cut, but Reagan didn't eat. Eating was difficult now. He was fed through a tube, mostly. That day everyone knew the end was approaching. You haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. March 2004, Maureen Reagan passed away from melanoma cancer. At 60 years old, Nancy told Reagan, "Ronnie, Maureen died. Our daughter died." Reagan showed no reaction. Didn't cry, wasn't sad. Because what did it mean anymore? Reagan wasn't at the funeral. Because he couldn't go. He was too sick. For the first time, a father couldn't attend his daughter's funeral. Because he didn't remember his daughter, Nancy went alone. She cried for both her daughter and her husband. Chapter 8, June 5, 2004. The final sunset, early June 2004. Reagan's condition became critical. Pneumonia, difficulty breathing. The doctors told Nancy, "It won't be long now." Nancy knew. She was ready. She'd been preparing for 10 years. This is exactly where everything changed. June 5, 2004. Saturday, morning. Reagan's breathing slowed. His heart slowed. Nancy was beside him, holding his hand. "Ronnie," she whispered, "you can go now. You're tired. You can rest." Reagan's eyes were closed, but Nancy knew he heard. "I love you, Ronnie. I always have. I always will." When the door opened, what they saw. 1 p.m. Reagan's breathing stopped. 9 p.m. His heart stopped. Ronald Wilson Reagan, the 40th President of the United States, passed away at 93 years old. Official cause of death, pneumonia. Complications of Alzheimer's disease. Real cause of death, Alzheimer's. He had died 10 years ago. His body was just following now. Nancy didn't let go of his hand. She held it for 10 more minutes. She was saying goodbye. "Goodbye, Ronnie. You're going into the sunset. And you always loved sunsets." Chapter 9, The Nation Mourns. The news spread quickly. CNN, BBC, worldwide. Ronald Reagan dead at 93. The Great Communicator silent. President Reagan passes America was shocked, but not surprised. They'd been waiting for 10 years. President George W. Bush. America has lost a great president and a great man. Bill Clinton. I will always treasure the exchanges we had. Mikhail Gorbachev. Reagan was a great leader who changed history. What you're seeing now is nothing. Reagan's body was taken to Simi Valley, Presidential Library. Nancy wanted a special ceremony, simple, dignified, fitting for Reagan. June 7th, the funeral ceremony began. Public line. Thousands of people. Moment of silence. Reagan's casket was displayed at the Capitol. More than 100,000 people came to say goodbye. You won't believe this, but June 11th, 2004. Official funeral ceremony. Washington National Cathedral. Margaret Thatcher gave a speech via video because she was ill. Ronald Reagan had a higher claim than any other leader to have won the Cold War. George H.W. Bush cried. Because Reagan was his mentor, friend, leader. Nancy was by the casket the whole time. She placed her hand on it. She was saying goodbye. Wait a minute, don't miss this detail. After the funeral, Reagan's body was taken to California. Sunset, Simi Valley. Reagan Presidential Library. A hill facing the sunset. Perfect. The gravestone simple. Ronald Wilson Reagan, 1911-2004. I know in my heart that man is good. That what is right will always eventually triumph. Nancy would visit every day. For 10 more years, conclusion. The legacy of courage, what killed Ronald Reagan. Official pneumonia and Alzheimer's complications. Truth, Alzheimer's. It ate his mind. For 10 years, Reagan's brain was examined in autopsy. Johns Hopkins. Alzheimer's disease had spread to all brain tissue. The hippocampus was completely damaged. The frontal lobe had shrunk. Doctors were amazed. How did he live 93 years with such advanced Alzheimer's? Answer: struggle, hope, and Nancy's love. Nancy's 10-year vigil. Nancy Reagan cared for her husband for 10 years. Every day, every hour she got help, nurses, doctors, but she never left. He is my life, she would say. I cannot abandon him. People asked Nancy, why don't you put him in a facility? Nancy got angry. He is Ronnie. He is my president. He is my husband. I put him here because I love him. You won't believe this, but March 2016, Nancy Reagan passed away at 94 years old. Congestive heart failure, but everyone knew the real reason, broken heart. 12 years after Ronnie, her grave was made next to Reagan's. Sunset, Simi Valley now together, forever. The gravestones side by side. Ronald and Nancy Reagan, together forever. The Alzheimer's revolution. Reagan's Alzheimer's confession changed everything. Before 1994, Alzheimer's was something to be ashamed of, hidden, not talked about. After 1994, Alzheimer's became a discussed disease. Research funds multiplied. This is exactly where everything changed. In 1995, Nancy founded the Ronald and Nancy Reagan Research Institute. Millions of dollars were channeled into Alzheimer's research. In the 2000s, treatments were developed. Diagnostic methods improved. Reagan led even as a patient. He raised awareness. The children remember Reagan. His children experienced their father's illness differently. Patty Davis wrote a book in 2004, The Long Goodbye, a memoir. I lost my father twice, she said. First in 1994 when he lost his mind. Then in 2004 when he lost his body. Ron Reagan Jr. My father lived with dignity and died with dignity. Even Alzheimer's couldn't break him. Michael Reagan, I think of him every day. And every day I pray that someday we can defeat Alzheimer's. What we learned from Reagan. What did Reagan's Alzheimer's journey teach us? One disease can strike anyone. Reagan was the world's most powerful man, but Alzheimer's took his mind too. Power, money, fame, none of it protected him. Being open takes courage. Reagan could have hidden his illness, but he didn't. He disclosed it. And this courage helped millions of people. Family love is the strongest medicine. Medical treatment didn't save Reagan, but Nancy's love gave him dignity. For 10 years, and Alzheimer's isn't just for the patient. Nancy suffered too. The children too. The family too. Alzheimer's affects everyone, and everyone needs support. Death is not an end, sometimes a relief. Reagan suffered for 10 years. Death freed him. Sometimes death can be mercy. The Great Communicator's final message. Reagan's final message was that 1994 letter. I now begin the journey that will lead me into the sunset of my life. Sunset, Reagan's favorite metaphor. You haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. When Reagan died in 2004, the sun was actually setting. Exactly at 1:09 p.m., his grave in Simi Valley faces west, toward the sunset. Every evening, the sun sets over Reagan's grave. Nancy had this done intentionally. Ronnie loved sunsets, she said. Now he can watch them every day. Reagan today, 2025-1. Years later, Reagan is still remembered. In polls conducted in 2025, among the MOU, Reagan never went to a nursing home. Nancy refused. I can't leave him with people he doesn't know, Nancy said. He should be at home. And Reagan was at home. For 10 years. He died in his own bed. But many Alzheimer's patients aren't so lucky. They go to nursing homes. They die alone. You won't believe this, but Nancy's struggle led to nursing home reforms. In the 1990s, Alzheimer's care homes improved. More humane. More dignified. Reagan indirectly improved the lives of thousands of Alzheimer's patients. He was leading even as a patient. This story isn't just Reagan's, it's Nancy's too. If you're also caring for someone you love, Alzheimer's, dementia, another illness, know this: you are a hero. You are the unseen warrior. You are the powerless, strong person. Nancy endured for 10 years. You can endure too, but ask for help. Get support. You're not alone. And remember, you're losing your loved ones every day. You have the right to grieve. Wait a minute, don't miss this detail, Nancy said in an interview. The hardest moment is every morning. Because every morning I wake up and remember Ronnie is no longer Ronnie. But she still got up. She still smiled. She still cared. Because that was love. Unconditional, endless. Painful but indispensable. June 5th, 2004. Time, 1:09 p.m. When Ronald Reagan took his last breath, the sun was visible through the window. Nancy looked at the sun, then at Ronnie. Sunset, she whispered. Your sunset, Ronnie, And Reagan left, peaceful, silent, dignified. The Great Communicator was now silent. But his message continued. This is exactly where everything changed. After Reagan died, Nancy lived 12 more years. She visited his grave every day. She talked to him, sang songs, talked about memories. "I miss you, Ronnie," she would say, "but I'll be with you soon." In 2016, Nancy also died. At 94 years old, her last words, "I love you, Ronnie, now together. At sunset, forever." Reagan's story reminds us the lights always go out, even the brightest stars, even the strongest leaders, even the most charismatic people. But what do they leave behind when they go out? That's what matters. Reagan left. A strengthened country ended the Cold War. Tore down the Berlin Wall, raised Alzheimer's awareness, inspired millions. And most importantly, he showed how to live with dignity and die with dignity. You haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. Reagan's brain tissue is still preserved. For research, maybe one day Reagan's brain will help understand Alzheimer's. Maybe one day, his pain will lead to others' cure. Then Reagan will truly be immortal. Goodbye, Mr. President Ronald Wilson Reagan. Actor, governor, president, husband, father, human. You left. But we continue to hear your voice tear down this wall. Mr. Gorbachev, it's morning again in America. And your final message. I now begin the journey that will lead me into the sunset of my life. The sun set, Ronnie. But the sun always rises again. And when it rises with you. Rest in peace. Mr. President, the Great Communicator may be silent, but the message lives on. Subscribe to Nursing Home. This was Ronald Reagan's story. Power, leadership, and finally, humanity. Subscribe to Nursing Home channel, because every leader has an ending, every hero has a fall, every great man has a sunset, and these stories deserve to be told. Which legend do you want to see in the next video? Glenn Campbell, the Rhinestone Cowboy's last song. Charlton Heston, Moses' Forgotten Commandments. Rita Hayworth, Gilda's Silent Farewell. Peter Falk, Columbo's Last Case. Comment. Tell us. The decision is yours, because their stories are our stories too. When the lights go out, what remains? Reagan gave us the answer. Love, honor, and a legacy that will never be forgotten. A young man at Reagan Library. Behind the glass, Reagan's 1994 letter. My fellow Americans. I have recently been told that I am one of the millions of Americans who will be afflicted with Alzheimer's disease. The young man is crying. Because his grandfather also has Alzheimer's. The museum staff member beside him. This letter changed history. Reagan showed courage and helped millions of people. My grandfather also has Alzheimer's, says the young man, and I was ashamed. But now I understand. There's nothing to be ashamed of. The museum staff member smiles. That's Reagan's legacy, courage, openness, humanity. The young man touches the glass. Thank you, Mr. President. You changed everything.